Hey guys, Steve from Perth Motion here, and today we're going to talk about selecting attempts in competition and the way to kind of go about it. I think, in my opinion, the best way to kind of go about competition in general for any kind of athlete is to focus on going 9 from 9. Competition isn't a day, although we're going to have novice athletes and beginner kind of athletes that will exceed expectations almost all the time on competition day. The further we get with any kind of athlete and the higher level that they get, the harder it is to, taper so perfectly that we can add kilos on that specific day every single time. The best thing that I like to focus on is just going 9 from 9, having a perfect day with someone, because if we overreach and you kind of put too much on the bar for someone to lift just because they want to send it, can be a bit detrimental for performance, obviously, and also sometimes mentally someone might hate competing because they've been just missed in front of a lot of people. But I think the best way to kind of do it is, I like to, as you'll probably know, I program singles quite frequently in training, and as we get closer to competition, we start to get that high intensity. We start to really push the threshold of what someone's capable of. So I'll generally will not ask for more on competition day. We have so many different variables that come into play. Someone could have cut weight. If we're talking higher level athletes, they're going to be cutting weight. We have the external factors of 3 people telling you when to do something, especially on bench press, which is people like to forget about. You got to wait for 3 people before you can actually start the bench, and you can't train to that standard all the time. It's really hard. We have that. We have there could be some kind of crowd jitters, anything like that. It's just going to play a role in how someone performs on the day. So my biggest thing is always, if you do have 2.5 to 5 kilos more on the platform than you did in training, just be smart about how you're going to do it. If you've got to get to know an athlete better. If it's your first competition with them, generally speaking, they will taper and they will peak well and they will perform really well on the platform, and you may be able to squeeze out a bit more. But if you just want to have a smart, successful day, just aim to hit what they've kind of hit in training, because it's then builds this total that you can just keep building on. And we're here to build totals. We're not here to PR a squat and then have a terrible day after, or just send the last deadlift because everything else hasn't gone to plan and then compete like that. We're here to build a total, and that's what we should be capitalizing on every single time. So I think I'm going to write up an example of how we kind of write attempt selections. So if we just look at something simple, let's say we have someone that in training, they've squatted 160 kilos. So we're always going to have a reach attempt. So we'd always have, a 3A and a 3B. The B being the reach attempt. So this is the one that's going to be a bit more of their training. If you see someone when they're warming up, when they've hit their openers, which I'll get down to, because the other thing too is we work backwards when we're writing a plan. Always work backwards, because this way you're going to be able to determine the jumps that you're going to make to be able to get to these specific numbers, okay? And this 3A is generally going to be what they've hit in training. There's always going to be that small window of it. They could not be, they might not have performed so well in their second, they might not have done so well, and you might have to take a little bit less. But generally this safe attempt is the one that we're going to potentially end up on most of the time. That's just the way it kind of works. But if we're looking at also if we're trying to get to this reach attempt, then you need to have another reach attempt second. So this means this opener would have flown. So if we look at this, so we go 157.5, I would say, or 155 to 157.5, means that this is going to be a 10 kilo jump to here, or a 7.5 kilo jump from the 157.5 to the 165, or only a 5 kilo jump to here. So generally speaking, the way that you're going to want to do this is from here, this 2A is going to be 150 to 152.5, because we've got the same thing then. We have a 10 kilo jump or a 7.5 kilo jump to get to here, which means that this here, the max that you'd want to start with your opener, is you're going to want to, like the absolute max would be like 17.5 kilos or 20 kilos to get to his, or 10 kilos I mean, 7.5 or 5. So you're going to have someone that opens, so we're working backwards, okay? And we want even jumps the whole time. So if they're going to end up going for their reach attempt, which we've got 7.5, 7.5, if we were to go back to here, this is where their 2 out of 10 would be. So we want to open lighter. The first thing that we have to do when we get a competition, you need to get a number on the board, okay? So this is where this one's going to be your lightest attempt. So it's a safe attempt. This can always be changed before you get on the platform. If you see that someone's moving phenomenally well, okay, just by looking at this, you know, we've got 7.5 here or 10 here, they end up here, we have the 7.5 kilo or 10 kilo jump straight into here, which is essentially the same as what this jump to this jump would be. We don't want to be jumping more than what we have done, unless of course you're pulling for the win or something spectacular like that. We want the jumps to be even or less than. So if we're talking jumps that are like a 7.5 kilo jump into a 5 kilo jump, or a 10 kilo jump into a 7.5 kilo jump, or a 10 kilo jump into a 5 kilo jump, you don't want to be jumping any more than what you have done in the previous one, because there's just no point. You're then adding more load, obviously. But if you see someone and they're warming up and everything's moving phenomenally well, you know you're going to end up at this bottom range, which is the reach range, obviously. And these jumps here are going to be, you know, far too big, because that's a 12.5, 15 kilo jump then into this smaller jump, which could be, you know, 10, because you'd probably end up here. This is where you'd probably adjust the opener on the floor. You'd take, you know, second last warm up or the last warm up, depending how far down the flight they are, and you change that opener on the way in. So then going back, always remember that our primary goal is to go 9 from 9. It's not to hit anything spectacular. You have so many more opportunities to PR. It does not have to be on the platform every single time, unless you're obviously going, it's a tight competition, you're going to pull for the win, you need to pull to PR, to win, I mean, you're going to PR your pull to win, then that's when, you know, it's going to be a completely different situation. But otherwise, don't be greedy. We don't need to PR on the platform. You can take PRs in training if that's it's going to ease your mind. It does not have to be on the platform. We want to go 9 from 9, build totals, and then we can capitalise on that moving forward. Okay, thank you.